What's up, fellow bike nerds? Welcome back to the Weekly Rewind, where we catch you up on all the hottest cycling news stories from the previous week. Today, we've got a few newly updated bikes, one of which is even cheaper than the outgoing model it replaces, as well as big news from one of the biggest brands in sports, and my personal favorite, a couple patents and spy shots to muse over. So, without further ado, let's kick things off with some of those new bikes. Up first, we have some fresh updates to the YT Izzo. And yes, 2 of the 3 new bikes have actually dropped in price, but still get comparable build kits. In case you're unfamiliar, the Izzo is YT's shortest travel trail bike, and the new models still get essentially the same frame and the same 130mm of rear wheel travel, but now come with a 140mm fork, 10mm more than in the past. This has of course slackened all the angles out just a bit and puts the head tube now at 65.7 degrees in the low setting. The biggest talking point here though has to be the price. The new Izzo is available in 3 different models, the Core 1, 2, and 3, and lists for anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500. The base model, Core 1, is $500 cheaper than last year's model, but still gets the same carbon front triangle paired with an aluminum rear end. Despite the lower price, it still, like I mentioned earlier, has comparable components and in some cases, I would say upgrades. Gets a full Shimano Dior group set, a Marzocchi Bomber Z2 fork, and Bomber inline shock. All of that makes for an incredible deal, and honestly, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a similar bike for less money. Now, of course, the Core 3 and Core 4 are also an incredible value, but to me, I'm most excited about this kind of performance on a sub-$3,000 bike. Let's stick with mountain bikes for just a sec longer and talk about the all-new Commencal Tempo Power. The electrified Tempo gets a bit more travel than the analog version, putting it at 135mm in the rear and 150 up front. The suspension tune has been tweaked a bit too, trading pedaling efficiency for more grip and sensitivity at the top of the stroke. Powering the bike is a 55Nm Bosch Performance Line SX motor paired to a 400 Wh battery. As with just about anything else that Commencal makes, the Tempo Power does have an aluminum frame, but even still, the flagship bike managed to tip the scale just under 44 pounds or 20 kilograms, which is pretty impressive. Speaking of models, there are currently 2 available options, the Tempo Power Essential and the higher-end Tempo Power Signature, listing for $5,200 and $7,000 respectively. I'll throw the part spec up on the screen for reference, but just like the YT we mentioned a second ago, these 2 bikes offer a pretty impressive value for those thinking about getting an EMTB. Now, if all that talk of sensible, value-oriented bikes has got you feeling a bit, well, plebeian, then I think the $10,000 Battagline 1984 should wash that bad taste right out of your mouth. This handmade steel beauty is a bit of an anniversary celebration, marking 40 years since the brand's founder, Giovanni Battagline, retired from professional cycling. As you can see, the bike gets a lugged steel frame, carbon fork, and yes, is rim brake compatible only. Elsewhere, however, the bike has plenty of modern features, including a tapered head tube, BS8 bottom bracket, and 28mm tire clearance. The 1984 is available as a frame only for €3,800, or you can get the complete bike we've been looking at here for €8,900. Either way, you can choose from one of 7 different sizes, or for an extra fee, have your own geometry personally developed by Giovanni himself. If all this sounds good to you, then you better act fast, because they're only going to be making 12 of the 1984s. We've got 2 more bikes, or at least bike-shaped objects that came out last week that we feel like would be worth mentioning in this video, both of which came from Segway. Yes, that Segway. If you're a Weekly Rewind regular, then these 2 bikes might look a bit familiar to you, and that's because we covered their rumored release about a month ago. But now the Safari and the Cyber have been officially launched and pre-orders are available now. The $2,400 Safari is what Segway calls an all-terrain cruiser. It gets a 750-watt mid-drive motor and 936 Wh battery, giving it a claimed maximum range of a whopping 88 miles. If you think that sounds powerful, then just wait until you see the Safari's big brother, and that's the $2,999 Cyber. This behemoth gets a 6,000-watt, yes, there were 3 zeros there, motor paired to an equally massive 2,880 Wh battery, allowing the bike to accelerate from 0 to 20 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. As it stands, the Cyber does not meet e-bike class regulations, but a Class 2 compliant version is expected to come out later this year. Now, regardless of which bike you get, it is going to be UL 2272 certified and feature what Segway is calling their intelligent ride system, which includes security and GPS tracking, maintenance reminders, and more. Like I mentioned earlier, both of these bikes are currently available for pre-order. You can do that on Segway's website or through one of the dozens of local independent bike shops that Segway is partnering with. Moving now from products to the news. And one story I definitely didn't expect to be covering this week was Nike's return to WorldTour cycling with their sponsorship of the women's team fdj-suez. This is almost certainly a result of their star rider, Demi Vollering, who signed a personal deal with Nike last spring. Now, to clarify, Nike is going to be their official lifestyle apparel partner. So if you're hoping to get a fresh new Nike kit to wear on your next group ride, I'm afraid you're out of luck. Regardless of whether Nike actually goes and makes some performance cycling gear in the future or not, I do think that this is a pretty good thing for cycling in general. Having such a big brand throwing their attention and money at our sport should be good for all of us. Let's just hope it goes better than the last time Nike got involved in cycling. In completely unrelated news, the good folks at Atherton are teasing us with yet another beautiful A200 downhill bike. But it looks like this one might have a gearbox. Details are still sparse, but it seems pretty clear that the new bike is being run sans derailleur, and keen-eyed observers have spotted what appears to be mounting points for a Pinion Smart Shift gearbox on the new bottom bracket look. Gearboxes have the potential to provide quite a few benefits to downhill racers, and there's already a few teams, including Intense, Zeroed, and more, who are already implementing them at the highest level of the sport. What's more, Gates, a gearbox belt manufacturer, has promised $100,000 for the first racer to win a World Cup on a gearbox-equipped bike. So, will we see the Atherton team racing this gearbox-equipped prototype at the first World Cup in May? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Our third and final news story for this week comes from our ever-innovating friends over at SRAM. Last week, SRAM filed a patent for a universal brake mount. Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking that we already have a standard for universal disc brake mounts. Okay, well, admittedly, we have a couple standards, but still, nothing like the derailleur hanger debacle of old. So, is this just some kind of Trojan horse for SRAM's futuristic wireless brakes? Maybe, but there's actually a bit more to it than that. Seeing as the caliper mount is always perfectly in line with the rotor, alignment should be easier than ever. Not only will this make bike setup easier, but should also help reduce sound and vibration. One thing that wasn't addressed in the patent was whether or not this system would work with a sliding dropout or a flip chip in the dropout, because as of right now, the second mounting point for that caliper mount is actually bolted into the frame. Doesn't look like there'd be any way to move that forward and backwards. It's also worth mentioning that SRAM isn't the first to propose such a solution for brake mounting. So, will we all be running SRAM's UBM mount in the future? I kinda doubt it, but I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. As always, I like to wrap these weekly rewinds up with something that got me stoked, and I hope will do the same for you. This time around, I've got a few more spy shots for us to ogle over. In a recent post by climbing god Ben Hildred, there appears to be a new Reverb AXS post, now with an external battery collar like what we saw on the new Fox Transfer Neo. What's more, Ben is a pretty big dude, and in previous bike checks, he's been running a 210mm cable actuated dropper post. So, if we divide both sides by 2 and transfer the X, I think what we're left with is a long travel wireless reverb post, which is something that we at 99 Spokes have been hoping for, and in the case of last week's video, predicting for quite some time. Obviously, if and when this new post does hit the market, you can learn all about it right here on the Weekly Rewind. To make sure you don't miss that video, you might as well go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, as well as like this video. Free for you, it helps us out. After you've done that, go ahead and get on out of here, but remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.